There you go.
And we're looking for Punkett, who is going to give the Howard Zinn Memorial Lecture Series introduction. As part of Free School University, we have a number of forums. The Howard Zinn Memorial Lecture Series, Dollars and Cents Economic Forum. Tomorrow there's the Immigration Forum. And welcome.
Sir.
So if Punkett could come up here in front. And here he is. Excellent. Here's our introduction for the Howard Zinn Memorial Series, part of Free School University. Punkett.
Hello, thank you for coming. I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to the Howard Zinn Memorial Lecture Series. The idea of the lecture series is to bring academics out from universities out to you, the activists, the people, the 99%, so we can have a dialogue about how we can make this world more just and fairer and more equitable. So I teach at BU, I teach physics at BU, and Howard Zinn also taught at BU, and I hope this lecture series will do his, will honor his spirit and his practice. Popular education has a long history in social movements, and we hope to keep that legacy going now. So before I go on, let me just tell you, we have lots of exciting events planned. Tomorrow at noon, there's the Occupy Boston Immigration Forum. At 3:30, Vijay Prashad, author of A People's History of the Third World, will be speaking at 3:30 p.m. Please come out. Chad Montree will be speaking on Wednesday at 6. He's the author of People's History of Environmentalism in the United States, and I think he just wrote an article with Noam Chomsky's daughter, Aviva. And we have many more people coming up in the next month, including Glenn Greenwald, Fred Magdoff, Richard Wolff, Norman Finkelstein, and many more. Please check the websites, occupyboston.org, zinnlectures.wordpress.com, which is probably going to migrate to the main site soon for more details. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Noam Chomsky. Yeah. You probably know him as the man who invented context-free grammars, but he's also a very famous social activist and a great radical thinker. So let's give him a big hand of applause.
So, orange jacket, you're going to have to get down in the front. Nobody can see over your head.
Yeah.
Well, the first question always is, can you hear me? Can you hear me in the back? Closest spot? How's that? Can you hear me in the back? Still not. Any suggestions?
Gotcha.
Oh, sorry, use that one. Okay, let's get the chair out of the way. Yeah. How's this? Any different? How's that? Okay, well, I'll try to not eat it. Okay.
We're both on.
Okay.
You're good.
Well, it's a little hard to give a talk in a Howard Zinn Memorial Lecture at a Occupy meeting. There's mixed feelings necessarily go along with it. Closer. First of all, regret that Howard's not here to take part in and invigorate in his inimitable way something that would have been the dream of his life. Secondly, excitement that the dream's actually being fulfilled. It's a dream that for which he laid a lot of the groundwork. And as I said, it would have been a fulfillment of a dream for him to have been here with you. And it is a very exciting development. Well, why don't you take this? How about that? Well, it is an extremely exciting development. In fact, it's kind of spectacular and unprecedented. There's never been anything like it that I can think of. If the bonds and associations that are being established in these remarkable events can be sustained through a long, hard period ahead, because victories don't come quickly, it could turn out to be a really historic, a very significant moment in American history. The fact that the demonstrations are the Occupy movement is unprecedented is quite appropriate. It's an unprecedented era, not just this moment, but actually since the 1970s. In the 1970s, began a major turning point in American history. For centuries, since the country began, it had been a developing society, and not in very pretty ways. That's another story, but it was a developing society with ups and downs, but a general progress towards wealth, industrialization, development, even in dark and hope. There was a pretty near constant expectation that it's going to go on like this. That was true even in very dark times. I'm just old enough to remember the Great Depression, and after the first few years, by the mid-30s, although the situation was objectively much harsher than it is today, nevertheless the spirit was quite different. There was a sense that we're going to get out of it, even among unemployed people. A lot of my relatives, that they'll get better. There's a militant labor movement organizing, CIO organizing was going on. It was getting to the point of sit-down strikes, which really are very frightening to the business world. You could see it in the business press at the time, because a sit-down strike is just a step before taking over the factory and running it yourself. And something which, incidentally, is very much on the agenda today, and we should keep it in mind. I'll come back to it. Also, the New Deal legislations were beginning to come under popular pressure, and there just was a sense somehow we're going to get out of it. It's quite different now. Now there's a kind of pervasive sense of hopelessness, sometimes despair. I think it's quite new in American history, and it has an objective basis. In the 1930s, unemployed working people could anticipate realistically that the jobs are going to come back. If you're a worker in manufacturing today, and the level of unemployment in manufacturing is approximately like the Depression, if current tendencies persist, those jobs aren't going to come back. The change took place in the 70s. A lot of reasons for it. One of the underlying reasons, discussed mainly by economic historian Robert Brenner, has done a lot of work on it, is the falling rate of profit. There were other factors. It led to major changes in the economy. A reversal of the several hundred years of progress towards industrialization and development, and turned to a process of deindustrialization and de-development. Of course, manufacturing production continued, but overseas. Very profitable, but no good for the workforce. And along with that came a significant shift of the economy from productive enterprise, producing things people need or can use, to financial manipulations. Financialization of the economy really took off at that time. Before the 70s, banks were banks. They did what banks are supposed to do in a state capitalist economy: take unused funds, like, say, your bank account, and transfer it to some potentially useful purpose, like buying a home, or sending a kid to college, or whatever it might be. That changed radically in this, and incidentally, there were no financial crises. It was a period of enormous growth, the highest growth in American history, maybe in economic history, sustained growth through the 50s and the 60s, and it was egalitarian. So the lowest quintile did about as well as the highest quintile. A lot of people moved into reasonable lifestyles, what's called here middle class, working class, it's called in other countries. But it was real, and the 60s accelerated it. The activism of the 60s, after a pretty dismal decade, really civilized the country in lots of ways that are permanent. They're not changing, they're staying on. 70s came along, sudden sharp change, deindustrialization, offshoring of production, shifting to financial institutions, which grew enormously. Also, I should say that in the 50s and the 60s, there was also the development of what several decades later became the high-tech economy. Computers, internet, IT revolution, mostly developed in the 50s and the 60s, substantially in the state sector. It took a couple of decades before it took off, but it was developed there. The 1970s, the developments that took place set off a kind of a vicious cycle. It led to concentration of wealth, increasingly in the hands of the financial sector, which doesn't benefit the economy, probably harms it and the society. But it did lead to tremendous concentration of wealth, substantially there. Concentration of wealth yields concentration of political power, which in turn gives rise to legislation that accelerates the cycle. Fiscal policies, tax changes, rules of corporate governance, deregulation, essentially bipartisan. Alongside of this began the very sharp rise in costs of elections, which drives the political parties even deeper than before into the pockets of the corporate sector. A couple of years later started a different process, which has been described particularly by Tom Ferguson, who's going to be here Monday. He probably will talk about it, so I won't much. But the parties dissolved, essentially. It used to be that if a person in Congress hoped for a position of, say, a committee chair or something, some position of responsibility, you got it mainly through seniority and service. Within a couple of years, you started having to put money into the party coffers in order to get ahead. That just drove the whole system even deeper into the pockets of the corporate sector, increasingly the financial sector. Tremendous concentration of wealth, mainly in literally the top 1/10 of 1% of the population. Meanwhile, for the general population, it began and opened a period of pretty much stagnation or even decline for the majority. People got by, but by pretty artificial means, borrowings, a lot of debt, longer working hours, but pretty soon much higher than in other industrial countries, even past Japan, long past Europe. Can't hear me? Sorry. Still? How about that? So there was a period of stagnation and decline for the majority that continued alongside a very sharp concentration of wealth. the political system began to dissolve. There's always been a gap between public policy and the public will, but it just grew kind of astronomically. You can see it right now. In fact, can't hear me? I don't know what to do about it. These things are in my mouth. And they don't taste good. I'll just keep going. You can make it up.
It's recorded on
Oh,
live
okay.
stream.
Let's take a look at what's... Get it on YouTube. Okay. Just take a look at what's happening right now. The big topic in Washington everyone concentrates on is the deficit. For the public, correctly, the deficit is not regarded as much of an issue, and it isn't really much of an issue. The issue is joblessness, not a deficit. There's a deficit commission, but there's no joblessness commission. As far as the deficit is concerned, you want to pay attention to it. The public has opinions. Take a look at the polls. Overwhelmingly support higher taxes on the wealthy, which have declined sharply during